Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Mark Janish. This is the From the Bench podcast. I'm your host, From the Bench, Mark Janish. Welcome, everyone. This is a new rebranded podcast associated with accessmediaglobal.com, my website. I own it. All the posts are of my choosing, and unfortunately, I don't have a staff of 35 people, because if I really did, I'd be able to do a lot more, but hopefully you'll enjoy accessmediaglobal.com. Been having that site since 2015, been doing this type of stuff since 2010, and this is a nightly podcast, sports review and opinion, and boy, do we have a lot to cover tonight regarding scores. I have a few gripes regarding not being able to see the Seattle Seahawks and the Oakland Raiders on the NFL Network. I don't know who's running the programming in Secaucus, New Jersey, but my God, is it possible? Is it just possible that we could get some broadcasts that are not necessarily related to the area where NFL blackout rules apply? I mean, really? Oakland's in Northern California. Carpinteria, Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo County, Ventura County, in Southern California. I don't care what they call this, the Gold Coast, the Central Coast. It is the South Coast of Southern California. Can we just get some games on the NFL Network? I don't know what the hell's going on with the blackout rules. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Did I get a little emotional there? I occasionally do. So tonight, I just want to go over some scores. College football kicked off tonight, and I saw a little bit of the Ohio State-Indiana game. Was not impressed with Ohio State. Indiana was leading at the time in the third quarter, 14-13. But I'm going to start off with the ATA event, as seen on ESPN2, I believe. Winners at the U.S. Open was Martin Del Potro. At the Arthur Ashe Stadium, Roger Federer won today. Dominic Thiem won today in round 2. Because of some rain, rounds 1, 2, and 3 were delayed, staggered, if you will. Rafael Nadal won today on the men's side. On the women's side, we had Elena Svitolina winning today. Madison Keys won today. Agnieszka Radwanska won today. Karolina Pliskova, she won today. And right now I'm just going to review some Thursday scores from the MLB. I'll have all that information here in just a moment. Thank you for joining me, by the way. This is a nightly podcast over Libsyn, new provider, rebranded podcast. You can go to Libsyn. You can hear the podcast nightly. You can also go to Stitcher. I'm waiting for Stitcher to approve this podcast. You know, hopefully it doesn't offend too many people. But, you know, I'll be in your face occasionally giving you my opinion. Basically because that's what this podcast is about. We love sports. I love sports. I'm an addicted sports junkie. Maybe that's why I'm not married, have no prospects, no girlfriends, and potentially, no shot. But anyway, that's another story. But right now we're going to go to the National League. Cincinnati 7-2 over the New York Mets. The Mets just playing out the string, and so once again would be Cincinnati. Minnesota, surprisingly in the hunt for the second wild card spot tonight. They beat the Chicago White Sox 5-4. That's a final. Texas and Houston played tonight, and it was Houston 5, Texas 1. And the suddenly losing Los Angeles Dodgers. The Los Angeles Dodgers came into tonight's game winning 91 games. They've lost 5 in a row. The Arizona Diamondbacks are in the second wild card spot, along with Colorado. Colorado and Arizona would face off today if the playoffs began today. But Arizona 8, the Dodgers 1. Dodgers lost 5 in a row. I'm not, going to panic yet. But then again, the Seattle Mariners of 2001, they actually did go 116 victories and 46 losses. And then they lost in the second round of the playoffs. So, actually, lost the American League Championship to the New York Yankees in 2001. Speaking of the New York Yankees, they played Boston tonight. New York 6, Boston 2. The Yankees, once again, leading the wild card race. The Mariners are about 4.5 games out. There's a lot of teams, including the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, about a game out. The standings, by the way, the wild card standings were just posted by myself at accessmediaglobal.com. Just mouse over the MLB logo there, and you'll see the latest up-to-date wild card standings from this evening. Toronto 11, Baltimore 8. That's a final. Philadelphia 3, Miami 2. Fortunately, Miami's under new ownership, looking for Giancarlo Stanton to perhaps pass George Foster. George Foster hit 52 home runs for the Cincinnati Reds in 1977. I don't know. The post-steroid era has made the home run not as key, I would say. But I wouldn't say necessarily that Giancarlo Stanton is of that era that would be using steroids. But he's got about 50, 51 home runs up to now. And we're just waiting for him to continue to hit the ball. And I'm looking forward to new ownership in Miami because God knows Jeffrey Lurie is going to be a welcome sight to see him go and see a ownership team that's led by Derek Jeter actually take over the team. Thank you, MLB. The world champion Chicago Cubs making a run at the National League Central right now. Chicago Cubs 6, the Atlanta Braves 2 tonight. That's the final. Milwaukee 6, Washington 3 over the Milwaukee Brewers. The Washington Nationals are waiting for Bryce Harper to recuperate from an injury. I also want to let you guys know that on the baseball page under my favorites, I have the Buster Only podcast, which I actually did post the last couple of days worth. He has an update on Bryce Harper. So what I want you to do is go to the accessmediaglobal.com. You either go to the news page or the latest news page. You'll see a nice picture there of Buster Only that I have available on my computer. So I put it up there. Nice little image. Mouse over it. And there's a couple of things. He's actually changed his podcast. For the moment by adding like a review of scores from the previous day. He broadcasts Monday through Friday. This is, of course, Thursday night in the Pacific time zone of the United States. Very close. We're at about 1 hour and 26 minutes away from September 1, Friday. But basically, he does a review of the scores. And then there's a secondary link that I posted, which is an interview with players, managers, and so forth with, I believe, Keith Law is on that for ESPN. That's one of my favorite links, along with the Peter Gammons, MLB.com, of course. I have what's billed as Mark's favorites on the baseball page. But go to the news page, mouse over the Buster Only stuff. August 30 and 31 podcasts have been posted. Just posted today's podcast before I went on the air about an hour and a half ago here. Moving on to finish up the scores, the hapless San Francisco Giants, they're probably going to win maybe 45 to 50 games. I think they're at about 38 or 39. They've been so inept I haven't looked. This is their worst season since 1985. They have a lot of guys that are aging and that are under contract to until the years of like 2019, 2020, 2021. So they're going to definitely have to offload some salary. But I don't know who's going to take the aging pitchers and the contracts they hold. St. Louis, 5. San Francisco, 2. So we're going to go back to the top here. I wanted to go ahead and cover some as much of the football scores as possible here. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay. Starting off on a busy Thursday night, UCF, the University of Central Florida, overcame Florida International University. UCF 61, FIU 17. This is the usual time in the season when you have cupcakes, basically easy marks on the schedule. We'll get to that in a moment. Moorhead 56, KYCH 14, 56-14. Wake Forest 51, the PRE 7. Elon lost 47-13. Elon over, let's see who this was. This was Toledo. Toledo over Elon. Toledo 47. Elon 13. Okay, so just wanted to straighten that out. And we're going to go back a ways here. Wake Forest, they actually Wake Forest, of course. Wake Forest played Walford tonight. Wake routs Presbyterian 51-7. So that was Wake over Presbyterian 51-7. As you can see, a lot of these games are gimme games, and they make money a little bit for the schools. Final in 3 overtimes. Next score that I'm going to give you, just a moment. Central Michigan stopped Rhode Island in 3 overtimes. 30-27 was that final. I'm going a little bit slower just because I'm not recognizing a lot of these teams. Georgia State, I believe they might have played Tennessee State tonight. But let's go ahead and take a look at that. Also, it does look like Tennessee State did ruin Georgia State's debut at Turner Field. The Georgia State, it was Tennessee State 17, Georgia State 10. Okay, so we're going to move on from there. Cincinnati I believe they played Austin Peay tonight. Cincinnati won 26-17. The Bearcats won 26-17, and of course the loser, as I did say, was Austin Peay. Did have that correct. Let me go ahead and move on to Buffalo and Minnesota. Of course, tonight Minnesota looks to have beaten Buffalo 17-7. The Minnesota Gophers obviously looking to do well in the Big Ten. They grounded out against Buffalo 17-7. So the Minnesota Gophers defeated Buffalo 17-7. And we're going to continue with some scores here. Here, it'll be just a moment. All right, we do have the UT Martin defeated Clarion 36-0 behind Cook and Galloway. The UT Martin Skyhawks and the Clarion Golden Eagles. So it was UT Martin 36, the Clarion Golden Eagles nothing tonight. So that takes care of that. We move on again to looks like perhaps Mercer and Jackson State. But let me Jackson State University. Looks like we'll get to that here in just a moment, so bear with me as the information loads on the ever-popular phone here. Mercer rolled over the Jacksonville Dolphins. Mercer 48. And Jacksonville Dolphins was 7. So that was in Macon, Georgia. Kaylon Riley threw for 3 touchdowns and ran for 2 more in his first career game to lead Mercer to the 48-7 victory over Jacksonville in the season opener for both teams. The redshirt freshman was 18 of 26 for 206 yards, ran 10 times for 54 yards, and Riley replaced John Russ, who started every game in his 4 years, which coincided with Mercer bringing back football in 2013 after dropping the sport way back in 1942. It was the Bears' largest season opening win since beating Georgia Southern 77-0 in 1937. So good luck to Mercer. Mercer bringing back the football team in 2013. A guy sits behind a 4-year starter, and his first game out of the blocks for Mercer, 5 touchdowns, passes for 3, runs for 2. So congratulations to Mercer in this case. Let me go ahead and continue with the scores and reviews here. Just a moment. Thanks for listening. This is the From the Bench podcast. I'm your host, Mark Janish, giving you a nightly review of scores and some detail. Campbell rolls over Methodist 70-0. Boy, in a squeaker. And this was in Blues Creek, North Carolina. Daniel Smith and Anthony Robinson threw for 2 touchdown passes, and Campbell rushers ran for 4 more scores in Thursday night's season opening 70-0 rout of Division III Methodist. So this just plays up my point. You get the cupcakes and then you smash them 70-0. The second time in program history that the Camels hit the 70-point mark. So this is just something. College football, I don't know if there needs to be a mercy rule like there is in, let's say, the Little League World Series out of Williamsport. Obviously, it's baseball. I get that. But I'm just saying, it's kind of weird that, you're going to get blown out. You have to go to the opponent's larger stadium. So your Division II and your Division III teams, they have no shot against D1 or even D2 competition. Once again, Campbell rolling over Methodist, the D2 school, 70-0 tonight. We're going to continue to move on. I believe it's Sanford, 28. We have Sanford winning 28-23 after a long weather delay. In Birmingham, Delvin Hodges had 4 touchdowns, and Sanford rallied for a second-half victory after a long delay over Kennesaw State. So Sanford 28, Kennesaw State 23. The game was delayed nearly 3 hours when the stadium was cleared at halftime because of severe weather. Hodges finished 16 of 24 for 241 yards, throwing for 3 scores in the second half, 2 to Kelvin McKnight to rally the Bulldogs. Sanford scored on its first drive of the second half as Hodges took a 28-yard pass and received one to Andrew Harris, taking a 14-10 lead. Following a blocked punt, Hodges made it 21-10 with an 18-yard TD pass to McKnight. So Sanford 28, Kennesaw State 23. And we're going to continue with the score here in just a moment. This is a nightly podcast. We review scores. We insert commentary. And we just have a good time. This podcast is generally available on accessmediaglobal.com soon after it's actually produced. Have to upload it into a few spots. Can also be heard on YouTube, by the way. I do have a YouTube channel. And now that I'm using a different provider, I'm able to upload to YouTube. So if you want to hear this on YouTube, you can certainly go there. I do have some video. So those will be up there as well if you want to hear some previous topics. I'll be doing some more singularly focused topical stuff on the YouTube channel soon. But right now we're in a little transition with providers and looking to consolidate the website. I just actually spoke to Gabe Pereira by email. He's out of the country, but we're going to be communicating tomorrow regarding some consolidation, some bringing together of some page elements that I like and would like to have you like as well. One of the things is that I posted tonight on accessmediaglobal.com is some audio, some NBA audio specific to the Golden State Warriors, the Los Angeles Lakers, and some NFL stuff. Sean McVay's press conference after the Rams' horrible performance. I put that in parentheses, I guess, because essentially in Game 4, your starters don't play, and guys on the bubble right now who are in the danger of being left off or maybe just barely making the 53-man roster will be fighting for a job. And speaking of the 53-man rosters, this is something, I'm kind of like, I wouldn't say paranoid about, but I'll put it to you this way. I'm going to be reviewing on Saturday evening. I'm going to be doing a podcast. Usually this podcast is on Monday through Friday with breaks on the weekend because, it's hard to maintain a couple of different sites. At a certain point, you get pretty tired. But I'm going to be back on Saturday afternoon, probably after 4 p.m. Pacific time. You can look for me on Twitter at I'm Mark Janisch, MarkJanisch, at capital MARK Access Media, capital ACCESS Media. You can find me on Twitter. Lots of stuff that I don't necessarily post to my own site. Some of it I do, but a lot of it will be retweets. I follow a lot of teams, want to keep everybody in the loop as much as possible right now. But as we continue with the scores, Sanford 28, Kennesaw State 23. Looks like Delaware and Delaware State. Delaware 22, Delaware State University 3. That's a final, of course. Maine and the University of New Hampshire. University of New Hampshire won this one in a squeaker over Maine, 24-23. That's the final. And also, the next game I'm going to give you will be coming up here shortly. Here it is. We have Western Illinois and Tennessee Tech. Western Illinois beat Tennessee Tech tonight, 41-14. Moving on with the extensive college football scores, going to give you as much as I can tonight. And we haven't even got to where I'd like to be tonight, but I've mentioned a few things that you can go to under the news page at accessmediaglobal.com. We have lots of stuff that we're going to be posting. We haven't gotten to the NFL yet, but there's a lot of NFL stuff. Eastern Illinois beat Indiana State 22-20 tonight. Moving on. We have Murray State past Kentucky Wesleyan 67-7. Okay, it looks like Murray State, scored 67 points tonight, and that was enough to beat Kentucky Wesleyan. So we move on from there. Tulsa and Oklahoma State. Okay, as we move on to more of the known schools starting tonight. Number 10, Oklahoma beat Tulsa, the Golden Eagle, 59-24. I'm sorry, the Golden Hurricane. Well, I don't know. As I said last night, the folks in Houston need your help. Look for constructive ways to be helpful. You may not be able to give financially, but I've encouraged the faith community to give to their local synagogue, mosque, or local church, and try to be helpful in your own communities. And obviously, continuing to pray for those affected by the Houston flooding tragedy. Once again, Oklahoma State tonight beating the Golden Hurricane of Tulsa 59-24. All right, moving on tonight. We have UConn rallying to beat Holy Cross 27-20. So UConn 27, Holy Cross 20. So congrats to them for an opening night win. Utah out of the Pac-12, one conference that I'll be covering. I also wanted to let you guys know that tomorrow night, I think I'm going to go over some stuff, some scheduling, and some game schedules for the weekend viewing. I did actually post those at accessmediaglobal.com under football. You can go ahead and look. The ACC logo will be there, Pac-12, Big 12, et cetera, et cetera. Utah beat North Dakota University. The Fighting Hawks lost to the Running Utes of Utah 37-16. A good Pac-10 opener in Salt Lake City tonight. So congrats to the Pac-12 representative in that game. Arkansas 49. Florida A&M 7. So Arkansas off to a great start against the Rattlers of Florida A&M. Also wanted to go ahead and give you this. This is the game that I said Indiana was ahead in the third quarter. The Ohio State Buckeyes beat Indiana. It was a 49-21 score. J.K. Dobbins, the freshman, broke a 15-year-old school record rushing for 181 yards in his college debut. And J.T. Barrett threw 3 touchdown passes. And number 2, Ohio State managed to pull away in the second half for a 49-21 victory over Indiana on Thursday night. Okay, so this was like one of those like megacast games like they do. ESPN will do this during the national championship game where they'll have analytics and observationists in the studio. But once again, Ohio State University 49, Indiana 21. All right, we're going to continue with the scores tonight. It looks like Duquesne out of Philadelphia. South Dakota State threw 5 TDs for South Dakota State over Duquesne, 51-13. South Dakota State opening with a win. We're going to continue with the scores tonight. Looks like we have This was a little bit closer than I anticipated. Looks like Nichols State. Nichols a 37-35 over McNeese State. Okay, the McNeese Cowboys. The Nicholas Colonels 37. The McNeese Cowboys 35. So they actually won tonight. Okay, moving on to continue with the scores here in just a moment. It looks like we have Idaho 28, Sacramento State, a few hundred miles north of where this podcast is being recorded. 28-6, Idaho over Sacramento State. So congratulations to the Vandals of Idaho stealing one from Sacramento State. Moving on. Memphis and Louisiana Monroe. Memphis 37, Louisiana Monroe 29. Sorry about that. And with 11 minutes and 36 seconds left in the fourth quarter, my final college football update for this evening, Thursday, August 31st, 2017. This is the From the Bench podcast. I'm your host, Mark Janish. The final update, New Mexico State University and Arizona State University with 2:58 left in the fourth quarter. We have ASU, looks like 37-25 at Sun Devil Stadium over New Mexico State University. Actually, ASU 37, New Mexico State University 13, and that with 11:36 in the fourth quarter. But yet, this is the only game that I can see that is in play tonight. So we wanted to get you as many college football scores as possible, which we have done. Apologize for any delays. Hopefully the broadcast will be a blessing to you. Want to go ahead and give you some football scores. And with AccessMediaGlobal.com, I have been promoting and been promising that I will be covering the Los Angeles Rams, the Los Angeles Raiders, the Los Angeles Raiders. Well, that's a Freudian slip. They haven't been in Los Angeles since about 1994. But it'll be the Oakland Raiders, soon to be the Las Vegas Raiders. It'll be the Los Angeles Chargers, the Los Angeles Rams, and the NFC West, hopefully winning Seattle Seahawks. Well, tonight, this game I did see, wasn't impressed. Dan Orlovsky, okay, say that 10 times fast. That's a real tongue twister. He got the start. Nobody really played for Sean McVay's crew. I do have the post-game press conference tape up. The video is up on AccessMediaGlobal.com. Scroll over the Rams logo, and you will see something along the lines of the Sean McVay press conference up there under the news page. So go there to get the comments of Sean McVay. Green Bay 24, the Rams 10. Jacksonville over the Atlanta Falcons. Jacksonville 13, Atlanta 7. Indianapolis minus Andrew Luck for probably, I'd say, another month or so. That's the best I can tell based on my sources. Indianapolis 7, Cincinnati Bengals 6. The New York Jets 16, Philadelphia 10. These are all finals, by the way. Buffalo 27, Detroit 17, Washington 13, Tampa Bay 10 in the final, and the Pittsburgh Steelers 17, the Carolina Panthers 14. I'm actually glad the Pittsburgh Steelers have acquired former Cleveland Brown Joe Hayden for their secondary, and I think he's going to be a real asset. I would expect Pittsburgh, New England, and Oakland to be in the mix for the AFC Championship. I said that last year, and unfortunately, Derek Carr, he got essentially injured in the last game of the season, and then, of course, Oakland sustained a first-round playoff loss. Once again, Pittsburgh, 17, Carolina, 14. The New York Giants, the New York Football Giants, 40. The New England Patriots, 38. That's a final. Miami, 30. Minnesota, 9. That's a final. The Baltimore Ravens, 14. The New Orleans Saints, 13. And the aforementioned Cleveland Browns. They seem to, I'm not going to say they're having a fire sale, but I think they want their roster to get younger. They've gotten rid of a lot of guys, and we'll see what Hugh Jackson does. I respect Hugh Jackson a lot. I think he does need probably a 2 to 3 year opportunity and a chance to rebuild the Cleveland roster, which, by the way, with a 7-year veteran, Joe Hayden, and all the money they owed him, not surprising that he was let go. Cleveland, 25. The hapless Chicago Bears, nothing. Hoping Mitch Trubisky or Mike Glennon, who they paid a lot of money to come in Chicago to produce. We'll see if that happens when week 1 comes around. The Tennessee Titans were beaten by the Kansas City Chiefs 30-6 tonight. And the Denver Broncos, 30. The Arizona Cardinal, 2. And the Los Angeles Chargers played in San Francisco tonight. San Francisco, 23. The Los Angeles Chargers, 13. And the Oakland Raiders, who I just mentioned, Seattle beat them tonight, 17-13. Let's look and see, just by way of review and recap, what happened tonight for Seattle. Seattle finished the preseason 4-0, which absolutely means nothing. This game was, however, played in Oakland. A late TD by Austin Davis rallied the Seahawks past the Raiders 17-13. Austin Davis, he did throw a 16-yard TD pass to Kenny Lawler with 1:10 remaining in the fourth quarter, and the Seattle Seahawks beat the Oakland Raiders in the 17-13 preseason game on Thursday night. The Seahawks trailed 13-10 following Giorgio Tavecchio's 28-yard field goal with 3:46 left before Davis engineered a 7-play, 75-yard drive in 2 minutes and 36 seconds that likely gave him the edge over Trayvon Boykin for the backup job behind Russell Wilson. That's one of those areas in Seattle that we'll have to see, because Russell Wilson was often injured last year. I'm surprised Russell Wilson did as well as he did, throwing for over 4,000 yards. But once again, and I'll mention this again, Russell Wilson has been on a 4,800-calorie diet for most of the offseason, dropped about 10 pounds. He's looking really good. So we're looking forward to seeing him next week, in about 10 days here, when the season opener in Green Bay. Austin Davis completed 10 of 16 for 123 yards and that touchdown, while Trayvon Boykin was 13 of 21 for 166 yards and a touchdown. Boykin was also intercepted twice. So Pete Carroll's got a decision to make. And like I said, I'll be back on Saturday to review those 4 teams that I mentioned: the Seahawks, the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Rams. Final 53-man roster, almost said 45-man roster. E.J. Manuel, looking for a job in Oakland as a backup, completed 8 of 12 passes for 77 yards and a touchdown. And he has the upper hand, apparently, in a QB battle for the second slot behind Derek Carr with Connor Cook. So Connor Cook, the 4th-round draft pick in 2016, was 6 of 16 for 71 yards and was intercepted on Oakland's final possession. So Seattle sat out 18 starters, including Michael Bennett, Cliff Avril, Russell Wilson, and cornerback Richard Sherman. The Raiders held out their entire starting offense and defense. Wide receiver Jermaine Kearse was absent in what may have been his final game with the Seahawks after rumors earlier this week that Seattle's attempting to trade the veteran. Now, I actually posted an article on accessmediaglobal.com. It has the Seahawks logo on it. Bob Candota of the Seattle Times did post an article this week, earlier, a couple days ago, which is on my site. So you can actually take a look at the inside story as best as Bob Candota can tell it regarding the possible trade of Jermaine Kearse, former Washington star. Moving on here. So that's very possible for him. Good luck to Jermaine Kearse in what might have been his final game as a Seahawk. And this is an area, I want to talk about this for a quick second because I was thinking about this today. The Seattle Seahawks have been one of the most penalized teams over the last 3 to 4 seasons, right up there. And Seattle has a tendency to beat itself over the last 2 to 3 years. 2 steps forward, 1 step back because of penalties. Once again tonight, Seattle drew 9 penalties for 122 yards. 3 of those penalties were personal fouls, and 2 were for defensive pass interference. The Raiders, who have a reputation going back to the 1960s with Ben Davis and linemen like Art Shell, Phil Villapiano, and so forth. These guys are not necessarily the sweetest players either. Oakland had several penalties for 60 yards. My point being is that Seattle better get it together in the penalty area. I don't know what in the damn hell is going on in the VMAC in Renton, Washington. Why is it that these guys just don't know how to control themselves? I understand that these are second and third string guys looking for work, but I'm talking about the starters, especially the offensive line. The offensive line has been terrible for the last 2 years, and I just want to make this comment. Ever since Max Unger, former center for the Seattle Seahawks, was traded to New Orleans in the Jimmy Graham trade, the offensive line has looked terrible. Now, the Seahawks aren't necessarily committed money-wise to this area of their line. They do everything backwards. They think that they have cornered the market on teaching guys like George Fant, who is injured. And that's not to disparage him, but he's a former basketball player from the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers from like 2011 to about 14. How can a converted basketball player like George Fant suddenly learn the lineman stuff? And then the way the Seahawks work it is, they seem to think they can just plug anybody in with what they perceive as ability into that slot. You have all kinds of guys. Let's see. Carpenter. The recently departed Russell Okung. You have many, many guys that have tried to play line for Seattle, but not everybody can do it. I just want John Schneider, if I had my way, I just want John Schneider and Pete Carroll to get serious about what they're going to do. Now, I don't know, maybe Luke Jokel, who they acquired in free agency, will be able to be part of the answer rather than part of the problem. But I can tell you one thing, week 1, I'll be watching the offensive line very, very carefully because Seattle is going to need a healthy Russell Wilson. Also, Eddie Lacy, he weighs about 245 pounds, has some incentives in his contract regarding weight. I'm hoping that he actually gets together. Because if the Seattle offense is clicking, I don't know about Procise and Rawls and Carson, maybe, but these guys are often injured. And what I'm saying to you is I'm going to be watching to see how the running game plays out. Because usually when Seattle is clicking, what they'd rather do is run the ball about 6 times out of every 10 plays. This way, making Russell Wilson, who is not a true deep ball threat, he's more of a West Coast offense, middle of the field, secondary lengthening of the field, that kind of thing. I'm not saying he can't throw a deep ball now and then, but the fact of the matter is the West Coast, he's more of a West Coast offensive guy. Plus, he's only 5'11 and 3/4, and he does better when the line moves and when he moves from the left to the right, so he can see over guys and can get the balls down the field, which he can. Hopefully, Doug Baldwin, Paul Richardson, and that crew can, I don't know, Tanner McAvoy maybe will be staying with the team. We're going to review those 53-man rosters, as I said, on Saturday, probably afternoon, West Coast time, I think after 4 o'clock. But we'll go ahead and do that at that time. Michael Bennett and Marshawn Lynch, they did sit during the anthem. Before the game, Bennett sat on a bench on the Seattle sideline, and Justin Britt stood beside Bennett with his hand on his teammate's shoulder. Britt did the same thing twice before. Lynch sat in the front row of coolers on the Raiders sideline in the same fashion, and he has every game during the preseason. Raiders first-round pick Karen Conley suited up but did not play. Conley missed all of training camp with a shin injury, was just activated off the physically unable to play list this week. Second-year Seattle cornerback DeAndre Elliott suffered what appeared to be a serious right leg injury. Here we go again. Midway through the second quarter, second-year cornerback, once again, DeAndre Elliott suffered what appeared to be a serious right leg injury midway through the second quarter. Players from both teams came out to check on Elliott, and the entire Seahawks squad surrounded him as he was loaded onto a cart. Up next, as I said, the Seahawks open the season at Green Bay at Lambeau Field on September 10th, and the Raiders begin their season playing the Tennessee Titans in Nashville. So that wraps up the scores tonight. I've given you as much information as I can. It's been a longer podcast than usual, but wanted to get that information out. Once again, you can listen to this podcast on Libsyn and Stitcher and AccessMediaGlobal.com. For the Off the Bench podcast, I'm your host, Mark Janish. We'll have another visit with you tomorrow night, late night West Coast time in the United States. God bless you. God keep you. And let's continue to pray for the best for the folks in Houston. That'll wrap this edition of the podcast up. We'll see you tomorrow night. God bless you and God keep you. Thanks very much for listening.